You can find them on Twitter, you can find them on the gram. After listening to their podcast, you'll be sitting there like, damn, taking their teaching from one level to the next, reaching up to Canada and down to Mexico.
Right? Because I just felt like we have to try our best to go away from the, constructs that teachers, educators, admin have created, saying this is school. I think we need to do kind of the opposite and try to replicate successful learning environments outside of school. Because you don't want to replicate everything that's out there, because there's a whole bunch of businesses that have horrible culture and that kind of thing. So I only pinpoint the ones that are successful. Like IDEO is one, the design firm that promotes, great culture, that kind of thing. And I quickly realized, okay, so I'm really drawn to project-based learning. So I basically was thinking, okay, what's the ideal learning ecosystem, your classroom or your school? And we thought up 4 pillars. The first one is transdisciplinary pedagogy, which is the teacher approach that helps create that real world context. So for me, it's project-based learning.
Right.
That's one pillar. The second pillar is the applied learning practices. That's the tool that students use to navigate through those, those problems, to tackle those problems. And then I quickly realized when I was designing this STEM program in Korea, when implementing it the first year, I totally ignored culture. Even though I was learning about design thinking, I ignored culture, and that was a horrible mistake. And because they went through we used project-based learning, we used design thinking process, but we never talked about the mindsets and the culture. And so they weren't really...
culture of like the classroom or the school. You're not talking about like the Korean culture.
No.
Okay. I just wanted
the
to be
culture
sure,
of the classroom. Yeah.
Okay.
And developing that atmosphere that's friendly to innovation, friendly to collaboration, feedback. It's really safe, cool place. So that's the third pillar, which is the culture of hope.
Right.
And then the fourth one is I realized after maybe 2 years doing the STEM program is that you need systems in place. So I think systems of sustainability is one of them. So you need admin to, make sure that they provide you with those systems, scheduling to allow flexibility to do really cool things, and those kind of. So those are the 4 pillars of that learning EduPermaculture learning ecosystem that I think every classroom needs to truly thrive, a school truly thrive, and I think a lot of organizations have those 4 pillars as well.
And do you see this like not just fitting in for like a STEM program, but this is bringing language arts in and math and science and social studies and, phys ed and, all the music specials and art and all that, you see that all working together, correct?
Yeah. So because we're trying to replicate the real world, projects are not just math projects. They're not just language arts projects. They're just projects, and those things integrate all these different disciplines. And so, yeah, we do start with standards of multiple subject areas and then combine specific ones to form some type of performance task for that unit. And it's really cool because we start with those standards, and each of those standards have essential questions, and we give them a driving question. The students ask questions and answer questions that require them to hit those standards, which is, I think that's what a lot of educators are a bit confused on, like the whole idea of inquiry and how do you lead them to a certain thing? Well, if you design performance tasks with standards in mind. And that performance task requires those standards. The students are going to ask those, okay, we need to know how to do this, we know how to do this, we know how to do this. And then those standards get hit. And I think a lot of people think, or not a lot of people, some educators think that it's kind of like a free-for-all, and where are the standards, how are the standards involved, that kind of thing. So.
Well, when you were talking before, I was going to mention the word curriculum, but then I'm like, you know what, is curriculum going to be a dirty word? And then now you're talking about standards. So like, I guess where we would follow certain standards, are you coming up with your own standards? Like, where are you pulling that?
Yeah. So in that program, it's not really a STEM program. It's more of a transdisciplinary program, because social studies was integrated with science, that kind of thing. So, no, we used C3, and this is in Korea, we used C3, we used Common Core, we used NGSS. Okay. And our curriculum was designed where we matched certain standards were taught at certain times because it matched well with other standards. And that was very much designed as well, so that we can have these really cool 10-week projects instead of very cool. Short 4-week stuff.
And in the 10 weeks, you students get to create iterations, which I think is so important. When you don't have those short projects, it's not like the real world where, okay, here's my project, it's done. And I mean, sometimes when you introduce, hey, we have longer period of time, now you have to look at your project again and create a new iteration of it. At first, a lot of my students are like, whoa. I did the project. I handed the project in, it's over. Because we don't do a great job traditionally of allowing you to go back and look at what could be fixed, or you say reflect on it and they're like, I wouldn't change a thing.
It's good.
Right.
Yep. I mean, I'm thinking of a lot of my initial writing classes.
Right.
Like the last sentence is punctuated. It's like done.
Boom.
Yep.
Yeah.
And and when you say writing class, like I was always bummed out when I was younger, because writing is something I dislike as well, because I wasn't good at it, or I didn't get the grades. And I remember just trying my best to write the best work I can do, and then I got the grade, and that was it.
Right.
And so, yeah, this whole you're creating this culture of like iteration, but also the students get excited to get feedback, because they're only because they have the mindset of build upon the ideas of others. They just know that the other person's trying to make their work better, and it excites them, right? So that's a total shift, because I hated feedback because I thought people were were criticizing me as a person.
Right.
You took it personal. Yeah.
How many kids, or I mean, I know my son, like there's certain, you can't say anything. And I think as a society, like we've built it up where it doesn't matter how you perform, you're going to get a trophy anyway. So now it's, when you get critiqued, it's, well, you don't like me, or you don't like my idea, or, fine, I'm done. I'm not even going to try.
Yeah. A critique is almost a personal attack.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's, and I know myself, even to this day, I have to work on that myself, because someone gives me feedback and right away my defensive nature starts to bubble up rather than sitting with it. And a lot of times, my feedback is coming from my wife, which that whole defensive and your wife doesn't really work so well. But like, I will say to her, like, I did have to take it in, walk away, sit with it a little bit to come back and go, you were right. This needs to change. This needs to change. This could be a little better. I don't agree with you on this, but I understand your perspective. But, initially I think, and it's just like you said, it's from traditional schooling, that defensive nature pops right up.
Absolutely.
Maybe because it was all the feedback was tied to a grade, right? It was, here's your grade. It's not good. And here's the reasons why. No even way to say, well, here, I'm going to give you a chance to fix that up and boost your grade up.
Yeah. And I think that's why rapid prototyping or just rapid iteration is key to anything, like writing as well, right? I've heard writing teachers just say, just write, just keep writing.
Yep,
And
yeah.
then you can submit that and get feedback from there. And then you can continue instead of, writing and then you're critiquing yourself and you're not getting any feedback and then you submit. Like, it's kind of, I recently made a video about a feedback strategy called plussing. It's Pixar's strategy to give feedback, I think. Feedback.
Oh.
And basically the number one goal is to make the other person look awesome.
Wow, very cool.
And that's your only goal. And to do that is just to take their ideas and then somehow make it better. And so and a lot of times when we get feedback, we point out what doesn't work.
Right.
And then kind of leave it there. Plussing it's different, where it's like you'll give a suggestion that will actually fix that part that's not.
So if you're pointing out something that's, there's an issue with, you're also giving this is an idea for how you can make that better or improve that.
So it's like, how about we do this, right? Instead of being like, this is not going to work. Right. Which that's all you hear when you brainstorm with kids.
Right. As soon as that's, this isn't going to work, you're shut down to anything that comes after that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely.
And is that video on your YouTube channel? Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
It goes back to one of the pillars, culture, right? Like before you can tell as an adult, an 8-year-old, hey, this is what I think you need to work on. That ground level has to be laid. Like, I care about you. I love you. And when you come in here, you can be weird. You can be funny. If you like to play with dolls, and I want to let you play with dolls, and I want to hear about you playing with dolls, and I want to be able to set it up where you can stand in front of the class and talk about playing with dolls. Because then I think you, like, maybe you don't hear right off the bat, man, I do stink.
Yeah.
This person loves me. This person cares. And not just the teacher, everyone in here.
Yeah, it's a combination of, you absolutely need love in that environment, but it's also a culture where everybody wants everyone else to improve.
Right.
So there's going to be constructive feedback. They're trying to make you better. So it's not all lovey-dovey. I think it's both, a combination of both. Like, the student does feel loved, but also understands like they're here to get better and better and better. And once they experience plussing, and once they experience, like, I love it when they're like, oh my gosh, that's such a great suggestion, I'm going to use that.
Right.
That slowly helps that person to be more receptive to feedback. But it's because the other person's doing it in a way that's not very aggressive or negative.
Well, and again, you're talking about places that have culture. Pixar, right? Like, has a good culture, and they have, there's no denying the creativity that comes out of Pixar.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I just downloaded, there's an Audible book, I think, or a book Pixar did, and I downloaded it to Audible.
Oh, nice. And that's an example of EduPermaculture, that approach where you're taking what works. Why not hand it over to a kindergartner and help them develop that and start, practicing those things throughout their life.
Thanks for listening to the Teacher Nerds podcast. Keep up with every new episode by subscribing on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcast, Anchor, or anywhere you listen. Remember to visit teachernerds.com, and that's nerds with a Z. Follow us on Twitter @TeacherNerds and on Instagram @TeacherNerdsPodcast. And thank you for being one of the Teacher Nerds.